I'm now joined by Reitumetse Phiri, an attorney and legal expert, rather, to give us more on this. A very good afternoon to you, Reitumetse. Thank you for joining us here on the SABC.
It's a pleasure, and good afternoon to you and your viewers.
Well, you're looking mighty warm on your side. Let's get into the conversation. Tomorrow, Justice Mandisa will interview as a sole candidate for the Deputy Chief Justice position. And, as we heard, if appointed, she will be the first woman to be appointed. Perhaps let's talk about these dynamics, the changes in the judiciary, and the rate of transformation for us to get to this juncture, ahead of our interview tomorrow.
Yeah, and the president has been clear that he intends to appoint her into that position. He's obviously consulting the Judicial Services Commission, as well as the leaders of the various political parties, as he's required in terms of the Constitution. But, we heard that little clip where she said, she just happens to be a good woman judge. And I think that's first and foremost what we should recognize her for. She writes impeccable judgments. I think she has about 200 plus reported judgments that are exceptionally good. The Supreme Court of Appeal is a high-performing court, so administratively, she's proven herself from that perspective. I think the office of the Deputy Chief Justice does require a few more components, which I'm very excited to hear her talk through. We expect her to be the chairperson of the Judicial Conduct Committee, which is effectively a disciplinary committee within the judiciary, within her role as Deputy Chief Justice. So I'd love to hear more around how she sees herself participating in those particular roles, which she wouldn't have traversed in her Chief Justice interview, because obviously, the role might seem familiar or rather similar, but the roles differ in some respects as well. But certainly a very credible, strong lawyer and administrator within the court system who I think the country will benefit from as having as Deputy Chief Justice.
Let's get into some of those dynamics you've just alluded to. We've seen the conduct of her interview during the Chief Justice position, and I wonder if you could then speak to what the expectations are from this interview. Obviously, questioning whether we're going to be hearing anything new. I'm asking this also because, the focus of the role of the Deputy Chief Justice comes strongly into the fore. And, I wonder what her qualities are that make her right and fit for this job at this juncture, given the internal and external dynamics at the judiciary currently.
Yeah, so I think we are going to hear a few of, similar type of questions. Hopefully this time we are really going to focus on her professional capabilities. I think, with respect to her interview, unfortunately, some of the commissioners, I think, were just guilty of just not really testing her credentials as much as some of the other judges. So I'm expecting this time around, given the dynamic of the Deputy Chief Justice position, that we would test that. I'm expecting, she has a very strong vision for the judiciary that she shared in her Chief Justice interview. I'm expecting that to be touched on again, particularly given that Chief Justice Zondo has approximately 2 years or so left in his term. So this is the person we should be expecting to be Chief Justice once Chief Justice Zondo leaves that position. And I'm expecting to hear a lot more about her vision for the judiciary as she's done. The Chief Justice role tends to be quite ceremonial in instances. It tends to be quite bureaucratic as, the head for the courts, etc. So I think those kind of questions will probably not necessarily be touched on, but certainly a lot of her academic and legal acumen. I expect to hear some of the judges and the judgments she's taken us through. There was a dissenting judgment she wrote within the Supreme Court of Appeal, which ultimately got upheld in the Constitutional Court. So she's shown herself to actually just not be afraid to be alone in her intellectual rigor. And I expect those kind of aspects to really be teased out and showed to us during the interview tomorrow.
As a legal practitioner, what are some of the changes that you're looking forward to, perhaps as she comes to occupy this position? What are some of the challenges, the short-term changes that need to happen, perhaps as we look into the long-term as well?
Yeah, I mean, she has really expanded the participation of women within the judiciary, and she's, not non-apologetic about that is something that she really wants to continue expanding. I think that is exciting as a legal practitioner. I think it's exciting to have a person in a senior Deputy Chief Justice role, given how the courts function, especially the lower courts. We heard in that little clip she was speaking about the, dispensing of justice at the coalface of justice. And I really look forward to quite a strong professional direction from her with respect to how we actually work in the lower courts in particular. The high courts tend to be generally quite efficient, but I'm pretty certain having her in that role, we are going to see more efficient courts in this country, over and above just the generally good legal jurisprudence we've come to expect from her and the Constitutional Court so far.
Reitumetse, thank you very much for that analysis. I don't want to let you go, perhaps by just quickly taking a look at the state capture report that's obviously set to be handed over tonight, and that ceremony tomorrow. I mean, 4 parts of the State Capture Commission report have already come out. It's the final installment, rather. And I wonder, in your analysis, do you expect it to be as explosive as the previously released reports? I mean, this one is in particular going to be focusing on issues, related to the SABC, their state security, amongst others.
Yeah, I'm certainly, looking forward to matters relating to the State Security Agency. I think we heard some really shocking testimony at the State Capture Commission around how those agencies were hollowed out and captured for nefarious ends. So I'm really looking forward to seeing, what are the recommendations around that, because that is a central pillar of our democracy. And to the extent it has been subverted, from what we've heard, I'm glad that we now have a report that will deal with those facts, in a determinative way and make recommendations around how we should proceed from here, especially on those particular aspects. So I am expecting that piece to be explosive, given what we know is happening in the country, for instance, with Parapara and Arthur Fraser, so I am expecting that piece of the report will certainly have our eyebrows. We're actually going to be quite surprised by what we see there.
No, well, speaking of which, there's obviously recommendations and enforcement that needs to happen. There's also been the overall cost to date that has impacted the taxpayer largely. And with these delays, I wonder if you could also then just speak to how this is going to impact, Parliament and law enforcement agencies going forward, who ultimately then now have to do the work, in response to the findings of this Sondo Commission.
Sure. So, I think the work of the Commission has been, really important for the country. And it is a pity in some respects that the word delays, but I think the product that we're seeing and the output is really important. And I take heart at what the President Cyril Ramaphosa has said around, is going to process this report as quickly as possible and have it in Parliament, insofar as at least a plan for processing these recommendations. The National Prosecuting Authority has also said we're going to start seeing seminal cases, which we have. I think it's, great that the Guptas are being extradited, and that process is underway as well. So I think we are starting to see, a concerted push to getting some momentum behind some of the recommendations of the Commission. I'm looking forward to seeing the President's plan for how to implement the recommendations and for that being dealt with in Parliament. And obviously, more than anything else, I'm looking forward for the NPA shifting the gear on these prosecutions that they have promised us.
Reitumetse Phiri, thank you very much for your time and your analysis. Attorney Reitumetse Phiri chatting to us about the inevitable state capture report that is set to be handed over to the President online today. And of course, that ceremony taking place tomorrow, as well as Supreme Court of Appeal President Mandisa set to be interviewed for the position of a Deputy Chief Justice.